Good morning, Graceway Church. We are live and having a fireside chat with our pastors who've been in charge and stewarding and leading this church for the last 8 years, Pastor NN and Pastor GS. We're so excited to have you here. So, today's more about a discussion to hear your heart, to find out more about you, more about the ministry, celebrate milestones, and just really get a sense of where you see the church of the future as well.
One of the purposes of this conversation is to allow the church, to allow the listeners just to get to know us, just to get to find out about us. On a Sunday, we are normally just preaching the word. So it's really just to take time as we celebrate 8 years of existence as a church to reflect on our personal life so that you can also relate to it, understand it, and in all of it, for me, all of it is just to demonstrate the grace and the favor of God. We would not have been able to do what we do and what we've done had it not been His grace and favor. Had it not been His love, had it not been His mercy.
On a Sunday, we are preaching, we're encouraging, we're preaching people on salvation. But most people really would like to find out a bit more about what has God done for you as pastors. And over the 8 years, we've seen the growth of the children that we call our spiritual children, the growth of our family as well.
What led me to start Graceway Church was a reflection upon my life and just seeing how God's love, how God's grace had been a part of my life, and I experienced God's favor. I am what I am today because of His favor, and that sort of compelled me to want to share this character of God that many people are not aware of, a character that many people think He's a God of wrath, He's a God of punishment. But I am what I am because of His grace. I am what I am because of His love. I am what I am because He picked me up from nowhere and made me the person I actually am. And that's one of the reasons why I felt it was important that we start preaching a message that speaks about His grace, that speaks about His favor, that speaks about how much God cares for us. And I reflected on all of that to actually say, it was not my own doing, it was God's grace, it was His love for us, and we need to stand, we need to share, we need to appreciate the grace that God has. Even the wife that I have, it's God's grace. I didn't deserve it.
When I think about the heart behind starting Graceway, Pastor, I remember very well, distinctively, when we were sitting and he was relaying how God has impressed it in his heart to reach out to people of different backgrounds, especially with the message to say God loves you so much so that you do not necessarily need to change before you come to God. His heart was mainly to reach out to people who feel that, church is for some people who are already changed. So it was to say, let's reach out to those people who feel that they want to see God work in their lives. The people who want to feel that God actually cares for even those people that do not feel that someone cares for them. So it was just that.
People are asking me, Pastor, how are you able to balance between family, marriage, work, and ministry? And for me, the answer is very simple. I think for me, it's all about God's grace. Whenever I do things, I pray to God for grace. But I think, on the back of that, because we only came into ministry I'd say, full-time ministry in 2012, and we'd been around for some time. But for me, what built a strong marriage was love. I was lucky, I was fortunate to find someone that loved me, someone that cared about me, someone that I cared for as well. So even when the children came, they came into an environment that was loving, into an environment that was giving, into an environment that was just reaching out to do good for that person. So we've been married. Next year we are approaching 30. So ministry found us with a very solid foundation. We loved each other. The children came, and we made sure that we created a family that loved. So we spent time together. We were blessed that we were able to also travel as a family extensively, so that there was very little time where it was Gordon, myself, and I. So I'm very fortunate, because even when we then went into ministry, because we had always done things together as a family, they did not disengage. One of my daughters actually reminded me when I broke these news to them. We were taking them to a holiday, and there we were having dinner, and you're saying to us, I've got news for you. We are going to ministry. And everyone says, what? Even my wife, when I met her, I never anticipated I'd going to ministry, but because we are united as a family, whenever we decide on certain things, we do them together as a family. And yes, we joke at times, and someone would say, Dad, but remember, this is not my calling, it's your calling. But despite that, we would still work things together as a family.
You've touched on very interesting parts of our lives and journey in ministry. And one important thing that you mentioned, which has kept our marriage strong, is love. We were very fortunate to fall deeply in love. So that has formed the basis of our marriage, in that we always try and make sure that we rekindle the love, because it is what keeps the engine in our marriage going. Because even when he said we're going into ministry, I was like, wherever God sends you, I will come with you. And we always encourage couples and encourage other people to say, it's very important, even if you are not in ministry, to make sure that that part of your marriage is strong, because it cushions whatever problems you come into. Whether it's financial problems, it cushions it. Whether it is just family problems, whether it is extended family problems, even ministry problems.
I think just to add on to that, thanks for that, Pastor. What I've learned in ministry is that when God says, I will find you a helper, God means I'll not find you a helper for marriage, but I'll find you a helper for everything that as the head of the family you engage in. So there are many things that I strategically still come back and say, this is what I'm thinking of doing. What are your thoughts? So I'm never out there alone. I am always engaging. We're always making decisions together. So we are what we are at home is what we are in church. I cannot stand in front of church and preach about love when my wife is saying you are lying, when my children are saying you are lying. So what I am here and what I am in ministry is what we are.
How we have been able to incorporate our children into ministry, or rather to make them feel that they are part of the ministry, is by allowing them to be part of ministry fully. It was God's grace, because it allowed us to talk about it, just like Pastor has said, that he sat down with them and said, this is where God is taking us. It allowed us to incorporate the new generation ideas, so that they do not feel like they are outside looking in.
Thanks for that. And just another thing to add as well. is that right up front, we're very clear with Pastor N that we are not going to impose, draw rules for them. This is how you behave. This is what's expected of you. But we always made sure that we gave them perspective that, family, be careful now. People see you as pastor's kids. We never demanded them to do things. We thank God that, He's blessed us with them. Our son was very active and he still is in setting up. In that, our other daughter is in worship. We never pushed them into that. Both of them were in worship. Our other daughter is in media, helping us on that front. And we thank God we've actually got a son-in-law now who's also helping us in a ministry. Our youngest son now is the one that's behind the camera there. For me, it's not about showing off. It's about humbling and saying, I thank God's grace for this, because it can only be His grace. When I brought them up, we never knew that we were going to go into ministry. We're just bringing up children in a loving family, in a caring family, and that set the foundation for everything that flowed from there.
You mentioned something that I think it was very important, where you said they found their place in the whole ministry. It was very important in our case, in that even when we are talking about families, the individual families that we find God brings to us, it's important as an individual family to make sure that your child finds a place in the church or in serving or anywhere where they fit, because if they fit, then they're able to enjoy being in God's presence, enjoy growing with God. We encourage families out there that your children don't need to feel like it's mom and dad's thing. Find a way to encourage them to fit in a way that will make them grow in loving God even more.
What I love the most about Nkosazana, when I first met her, she was very shy. She was very shy. She not only was she shy, but she was very certain and very clear in terms of what she wanted. When I approached her, I thought, is one that I'm just going to walk over. But 8 months later, I was still asking her out, and she was still saying, no, I don't love you. I don't love you, but look at what the Lord has done. For me, that was very, very important, that here was someone not only beautiful, but here was someone that was humble, but also firm in her values. This is a message for young people. Don't go for someone just because of what they are flashing. Get to a stage where you really understand the person, appreciate the person, because marriage is a journey. Marriage is a journey. That is what I loved, and I still love that.
What I loved the most, or what I fell in love with initially, was his kindness, his good heart, and also the fact that he was very romantic. Very romantic, the kind of guy who easily buys chocolates, easily sends cards and writes letters, the most romantic letters. And besides that, also a man who knew where he was going.
Someone might be asking, Pastor, you've shared with us that, you are a professional, you are also in ministry. What can the take home be for me? I think for me, very, very importantly, it is your ability not to separate your identity as a child of God in any environment that you walk into. I think for me, it is very important that you have the desire. It is very important that you set goals, it is very important that you bring those goals to a God. I think for me, I am a chartered accountant. I am a child of God, but it was not easy. I failed twice, passed on the third time, but I was determined. I never gave up. So I just want to say to you out there, don't give up, because that one moment where you decide to give up, that could be the moment where you experience your breakthrough in whatever. So that is my encouragement to you, to actually say, whether it be in the workplace, don't give up.
I would encourage young people to say, like Pastor saying, keep thriving for your goals. Let no one discourage you to achieve much more in life, especially when it comes to, if you want to get your degrees, get your degrees. I find that where God's grace covers you, you thrive. Where God places you, you thrive. So take all those opportunities and continue thriving. And as much as you are moving forward with life, there are a lot of channels that God will open up for you, whether it is ministry, whether it is life in general. Just take everything with the mind to say you want to do it for God and you want to do it for your family.
Just to add on to something there, I think it's very important that even in the workplace, you always bring God. It's very important for you, young professional, that you never separate God from whatever you are doing, because God wants to be a part of whatever you are doing, whether it be you an accountant, a lawyer. If you've got a case tomorrow, every morning just pray, God, give me wisdom to give the best advice. I'm a consultant. God, open my mind, give me insight so that I can be able to give the best advice here. We have been in existence for 8 years, and in the 8 years, we've seen the hand of God in a mighty way. We've seen the hand of God in an amazing way. I think just most recently, we've established a Bible college. This year, we are seeing the 3rd years come to an end, and these are future leaders.
Yes, we celebrate 8 years, and there's quite a lot that we are thankful to God for. Going back and looking at all the things that God has put together for the church, for Graceway, being able to buy a large piece of land, 9-hectare piece of land, cash was one of the biggest milestones. Being able to move into that piece of land and put a structure was a big milestone. Being able to have our first service in that building, which was 3 years ago, was a big milestone. So we are just grateful to God, because there's quite a lot that we've been able to see God do in a short space of time. So it's been 8 years, but we've seen the mighty hand of God in quite a lot of things.
And also, I think for me, the other thing is, I just always marvel at how God brings the right people to support you in His work. And I am so grateful to Graceway Church. I'm so grateful to the members that come and fellowship at Graceway Church. There are a number of them that were there when we first opened, the first time we opened doors as a church. Those have been there. There are many others that joined later and have never left. That's a milestone for us to actually say, here are people that have become part of this family, that have become part of this vision, that have become part of what God has laid into our hearts and are supporting us in whatever way, in prayer, financially, with hands, with resources. For us, that is a great milestone. Where do you see the church of the future? I think for me, as Graceway Church, I see Graceway Church continuing being a church of fellowship, a church of love, but I see Graceway Church stepping beyond the walls of a sanctuary I see Graceway Church leveraging on the platforms that have already been created in reaching out to the greater world, in sharing the gospel, in bringing people to know Christ than the confines of Pretoria East. I see Graceway Church eventually, and I see this being the church of the future, where people will gather in smaller groups. You'll have smaller groups, whether be it in London, whether be it in the States, where we're listening to a message from Graceway Church and we are connecting to that message, but at the same time fellowshipping in those smaller groups. So that is the church of the future that I see, and Graceway Church being a part of that change. The gospel must still be preached. That gospel can never be changed, but there are many things around the gospel that can be changed to make sure that people grow spiritually, to make sure that there's a greater reach, to make sure that ministry continues to exist.